Rancher wanted a cook, but the black woman's nightly songs made him burn for a wife instead. The weathered rancher crumples another rejection letter as dust devils swirl across his dying Wyoming spread, unaware that salvation approaches on the evening stagecoach. Townspeople whisper he's cursed, betrayed by his bride, orphaned by plague, destined for bankruptcy within months. They place bets on when the bank will seize his land. But when the refined woman steps off that stagecoach, carpetbag clutched tight and secrets buried deep, she brings more than cooking skills to his isolated ranch. Her haunting melodies will awaken something he thought dead, while her hidden past threatens to destroy the sanctuary they're desperately building together. Yet her aristocratic bloodline and his growing obsession with her voice may be the least dangerous forces hunting them across the frontier. Will their forbidden connection survive the reckoning racing toward them, or will the shadows of her former life consume everything they've dared to dream? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The Wyoming wind howled through the gaps in Marcus Whitfield's ranch house, carrying with it the scent of dying dreams and unpaid debts. He stood at his kitchen window, watching tumbleweeds roll across land that had once been his pride. 3 years since Elizabeth had run off with his best friend, 2 years since typhoid claimed his parents. Now the bank circled like vultures. The crumpled notice in his pocket had drawn only 2 responses in 3 weeks. The first man took one look at the isolation and rode away without dismounting. The second demanded wages Marcus couldn't afford. His cattle grew thin, his fences sagged. His neighbors whispered. Silas Crawford made his third offer that morning, riding up with 2 hired men as if Marcus might finally see reason. "Property values are falling," Crawford had said, not bothering to dismount. "My offer stands, but not for long." Marcus had watched them ride away, knowing Crawford was probably right. The banker had made it clear, 3 months to catch up on payments or lose everything. The afternoon stagecoach arrived in a cloud of dust, carrying the usual cargo of dreamers and drifters. But this passenger was different. She stepped down with careful dignity, responding to my notice. She turned, meeting his gaze directly. Most people looked away or through him these days. She didn't. "Josephine Rivers, I saw your advertisement in town. Marcus Whitfield." He gestured toward his wagon. "Ranch is 5 miles out." She climbed up without assistance, back straight, despite the long journey. Martha watched them leave with disapproval etched in every line of her face. The ride passed in silence. Marcus stole glances at his passenger, noting the way she studied the landscape with intelligent eyes. Not the desperate hunger of someone fleeing poverty, but the careful assessment of someone choosing their ground. His ranch looked worse from her perspective. Sagging barn, peeling paint, the kind of place that broke spirits and buried dreams. "Not much to look at," he admitted. "I've seen worse." Something in her tone suggested she had indeed seen worse. Much worse. The bunkhouse held 4 men, rough types who worked for low wages because Marcus couldn't afford better. They emerged as the wagon stopped, curiosity plain on their weathered faces. "Boys, this is Miss Rivers. She'll be cooking for us." Jake Thompson spat tobacco juice dangerously close to her skirts. "Fancy lady like that? She'll last a week." Josephine ignored him completely, shouldering her bag with practiced ease. Marcus showed her to the small cabin that served as kitchen and quarters for hired help. She examined everything with the same careful assessment she'd given the landscape. "Meals at sunrise, noon, and sunset," Marcus explained. "Pay is room and board plus $10 monthly, assuming the ranch survives that long." She nodded, already rolling up her sleeves. That first evening, Marcus sat on his porch listening to the familiar sounds of failure. cattle lowing in distress, wind through broken shutters, the creak of wood that needed repair he couldn't afford. Then he heard something else, a voice, low and rich, carrying a melody that seemed to rise from the very earth. Josephine stood in her doorway, unaware of her audience, singing something that spoke of sorrow and hope intertwined. The ranch books, her expression had shown understanding of numbers most frontier cooks wouldn't recognize. By the third day, even his most skeptical ranch hand was singing her praises. But Marcus found himself drawn by more than her cooking. The way she handled his aggressive cattle with calm authority, the intelligence that flickered in her dark eyes when she thought no one was watching. And those evening songs. Each night, she stood in her doorway and sang, transforming his dying ranch into something that felt almost like hope. The townspeople came calling by the end of the week. Martha Henley led the delegation, her face pinched with righteousness. People are talking, Marcus, about your choice and help. People always talk. This is different. You're playing with fire. Marcus watched Josephine through the kitchen window, methodically preparing their evening meal. Martha was right about one thing. This was different. Everything about Josephine Rivers was different. The question was whether different meant salvation or destruction. 2 weeks into September, Marcus discovered his ranch was turning a profit for the first time in months. Josephine had reorganized his bookkeeping system, revealing income streams he'd been too disorganized to track. She'd negotiated better prices with suppliers, stretching every dollar like it was made of gold. "You're wasting money on inferior grain," she explained, showing him columns of figures. "Better quality costs more up front, but produces healthier cattle." Her handwriting was elegant, educated, the kind of penmanship that came from expensive schooling, not frontier necessity. The ranch hands had stopped complaining entirely. Pete Morrison, his most surly employee, actually whistled while working. Jake Thompson had taken to washing before meals, something Marcus hadn't seen in 2 years of employment. "That woman's got magic in her hands," Pete declared over breakfast. "Haven't eaten this good since my mama died." But it was more than cooking. Josephine moved through the ranch like she understood its rhythms. She could predict weather changes by watching cattle behavior. She knew which horses were favoring injured legs before the riders noticed. She caught bookkeeping errors that had been bleeding money for months. Marcus found himself inventing reasons to visit the kitchen, checking supplies, folks are saying. Marcus watched Josephine through the window, hanging laundry with the same methodical precision she brought to everything. Crawford's eyes followed his gaze with uncomfortable intensity. "Careful, Whitfield. Some types of help come with complications you can't afford." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. Crawford's words echoed in his head, mixing with Martha Henley's warnings and the whispered conversations that stopped whenever he entered the general store. He stepped onto his porch, seeking air that didn't feel suffocating. Josephine's voice drifted across the yard, but tonight, something was different. The melody was unfamiliar, complex in ways that made his chest ache. He moved closer, drawn by sounds that seemed to bypass his mind and speak directly to his soul. Through her open window, he glimpsed her silhouette against lamplight. Her posture was different, proud, regal. The song built to impossible heights, notes that belonged in concert halls, not frontier kitchens. This wasn't the folk music of someone who'd learned songs around campfires. This was classical training, years of expensive instruction. The realization hit him like cold water. Marcus knocked on her door the next morning, his usual confidence replaced by nervous energy. "We need to talk." Josephine's composure never wavered, but something flickered in her eyes. Fear, perhaps, or resignation. "I heard you singing last night." That wasn't a spiritual or a folk song. She folded her hands, waiting. That was opera. Italian, unless I'm mistaken. Where does a frontier cook learn to sing like that? The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. When she finally spoke, her voice carried defeat. Philadelphia. I had private instructors. Private instructors cost money, serious money. My father was successful. Before he died. Marcus studied her face, noting details he'd missed before. The quality of her skin suggested someone who'd lived comfortably most of her life. Her hands, though work-hardened now, showed signs of previous softness. What kind of successful? He owned shipping interests. Import business. We lived well. Then what are you doing cooking on a failing ranch in Wyoming?
Looking for you. Undoubtedly.
And when he finds you? Josephine's composure cracked for just a moment, revealing something that made Marcus's hands clench into fists. Vincent doesn't accept refusal well. That evening, Marcus sat on his porch with new eyes. The woman in the kitchen wasn't just a cook who could sing. She was someone who'd given up wealth and social position rather than surrender her freedom. Someone who'd traveled across a continent to escape a man who viewed her as property. Her evening song carried different weight now. Not entertainment, but defiance. A declaration that she remained unbroken despite everything she'd lost. When she finished, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. Josephine. She turned, lamplight catching the exhaustion she usually hid so well. Whatever Vincent Ashworth thinks he owns, he doesn't. You're under my protection now. You don't understand what you're offering. I understand enough. This ranch may not be much, but it's mine. That makes you my responsibility. Vincent has resources, connections. He won't simply accept defeat. Marcus thought about his failing ranch, his mounting debts, his reputation that was already damaged beyond repair. Then he looked at the woman who'd brought life back to his dying land. Let him come. October brought the first serious snow, and something Marcus hadn't felt in years. Contentment. He woke each morning to the smell of fresh bread and the sound of Josephine's humming. The ranch ran smoother than it had since his parents' time. His bank account showed black ink for 3 consecutive weeks. More than that, he found himself looking forward to each day in ways he'd forgotten were possible. They worked side by side during the brutal Wyoming winter, mending fences in knee-deep snow and hauling feed to stranded cattle. Josephine never complained, never asked for easier tasks. She simply rolled up her sleeves and matched his pace. You don't have to do this, he told her one morning as she hefted feed sacks beside him. Yes, I do. Her quiet determination spoke volumes. This wasn't just work for her. It was proving something to herself. Friendship. Friendship deepened into something neither dared name aloud. Marcus caught himself studying her face when she thought he wasn't looking. The way lamplight caught the curve of her cheek. How her eyes sparkled when she discovered another way to improve ranch operations. The graceful movements that spoke of breeding and education she'd abandoned for freedom. Josephine seemed equally aware of him. She lingered after discussing business matters, finding excuses to stand closer while reviewing accounts. Her fingers brushed his when passing plates at dinner. Small touches that sent electricity through his entire body. The ranch hands noticed. Pete Morrison made pointed comments about the boss being happier than anyone had seen him. Jake Thompson started whistling romantic ballads while working. Even the cattle seemed to sense the change in atmosphere. But happiness made Marcus careless. He should have paid more attention to strangers asking questions in town. Should have noticed the well-dressed men who claimed to be traveling through, but lingered too long at the saloon. Should have heeded the warnings and Josephine's increasingly nervous glances toward the horizon. The first sign of real trouble came on a Tuesday morning in November. "Someone was asking about you in town yesterday," Tom Henley mentioned casually while picking up supplies. "Fancy fellow from back east. Had money written all over him." Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. What kind of questions? Whether anyone matching your cook's description was working in the area. Showed a photograph, from what I heard. That evening, Marcus found Josephine pacing her small cabin like a caged animal. "He's found me." "We don't know that for certain." "I know Vincent. He's methodical, patient. He wouldn't send investigators unless he was confident of success." Marcus wanted to reassure her, but empty promises would insult her intelligence. Vincent Ashworth had resources Marcus couldn't match. Money, legal connections, the kind of authority that could crush frontier dreams without effort. "What will you do?" "Run again. Tonight, if necessary." The casual way she said it hit Marcus like a physical blow. He has everything except the thing that matters most, which is, he doesn't have your heart. The words hung between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Josephine's composure cracked completely, revealing the longing she'd been hiding for months. "Marcus, I love you. Have since that first night I heard you sing. Not because you're convenient or useful or any other practical reason. Because you're the strongest, most intelligent, most beautiful woman I've ever met. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Marry me." The proposal escaped before he'd consciously decided to make it, but once spoken, it felt inevitable. Right in ways that transcended logic or social convention. People will never accept it. The gossip will destroy whatever reputation you have left. My reputation died with my parents. All I care about now is building something worth defending. Outside, snow began falling harder, as if nature itself was sealing them inside this moment of decision. If I stay, Vincent will come. When he does, everything you've worked for will be at risk. If you leave, I'll have nothing left worth protecting. Josephine stared at him for a long moment, weighing possibilities that could save or damn them both. Then we face him together. The decision sealed their fate. Within a week, federal marshals would arrive with warrants. Vincent Ashworth would step off the evening stagecoach with confidence born of certain victory. But tonight, they had each other, and the illusion that love could conquer anything. Vincent Ashworth arrived with the authority of civilization at his back. 3 federal marshals flanked him as he stepped off the Tuesday stagecoach, their badges catching morning sunlight like warnings. He wore Eastern wealth like armor, from his tailored coat to his gold pocket watch. Everything about him proclaimed superiority over the rough frontier settlement. Marcus watched from the general store as Vincent surveyed the town with obvious distaste. This was the man who'd driven Josephine across a continent, who'd turned love into legal ownership and viewed women as business assets to be acquired. "That's him," Marcus murmured, "brought to everything." Vincent stepped forward, his satisfaction barely concealed behind mock concern. "Josephine, my dear, you've caused considerable trouble." "Mr. Ashworth." Her tone carried ice that could freeze summer. Vincent's smile widened at her obvious hatred. "I trust you'll return what belongs to me without further difficulty." "I have nothing that belongs to you." The courts will decide that. The marshals produced evidence that made Marcus's blood run cold. Jewelry worth thousands of dollars. Documents proving the pieces belonged to the Ashworth family estate. Witnesses swearing Josephine had stolen the items before fleeing Philadelphia. "These belonged to my mother," Josephine said quietly. "Your mother received them as gifts during her brief association with my family. Upon her death, they reverted to the estate." The lie came so smoothly that Marcus almost believed it himself. Vincent had clearly practiced this performance, anticipating every possible defense. They took her in shackles, loading her into a prison wagon like she was dangerous. Marcus watched helplessly as the woman he loved disappeared behind iron bars, her face visible through a small window, until distance swallowed everything. The ranch felt dead without her. No morning songs, no evening concerts, no intelligence transforming chaos into order. Marcus moved through each day like a man walking underwater, everything muffled and strange. His neighbors offered sympathy, mixed with relief. Martha Henley made pointed comments about divine intervention, saving Marcus from a terrible mistake. Even supportive friends seemed to think he'd dodged catastrophe, rather than lost salvation. Only Pete Morrison understood the depth of Marcus's devastation. "That woman was special, boss. Could see it in how she moved, how she talked. Don't know what this Ashworth fellow's claiming, but I'd bet money she never stole nothing from nobody." Marcus threw himself into investigating Vincent's claims, liquidating ranch assets to hire the territory's best lawyer. Samuel Hayes was expensive, but honest, with a reputation for fighting impossible cases. "The evidence looks solid," Hayes admitted after reviewing the charges. "These jewels are worth more than most people see in a lifetime. If she took them, federal prison is certain. She didn't take
Freedom to Vincent's control. He traveled to the territorial capital, seeking information about Vincent's background. What he found made his hands shake with rage. Vincent Ashworth was indeed wealthy, but his fortune was built on questionable business practices. Marcus discovered 3 previous cases where young women had been accused of theft after rejecting Vincent's advances. All 3 had been convicted. 2 died in prison. 1 simply disappeared. The pattern was clear to anyone willing to look. Vincent used the legal system as a weapon against women who refused his attentions. He manufactured evidence, bribed witnesses, twisted laws designed to protect property into tools for persecution. But proving the pattern would require more resources than Marcus possessed. Vincent had covered his tracks carefully, leaving only hints and shadows for anyone brave enough to investigate. The trial was scheduled for December, giving Marcus less than a month to build a defense against years of careful preparation. Vincent had chosen the venue carefully, a town where federal judges were known for harsh sentences and little sympathy for defendants who looked like Josephine. Hayes was pessimistic about their chances. Judge Morrison has never acquitted anyone of federal theft charges. He believes harsh sentences discourage crime. Then we need new evidence. From where? Vincent has controlled the narrative from the beginning. Every witness supports his version of events. Marcus stared out the lawyer's window at streets bustling with people who had no idea justice was being perverted in their name. Somewhere in those crowds might be the key to Josephine's freedom, if he could find it before time ran out. Vincent's confidence suggested he viewed the trial as a formality. He'd moved into the territory's finest hotel, holding court like visiting royalty. Local businessmen courted his attention, hoping to benefit from his obvious wealth and connections. But confidence could breed carelessness. Wealthy men often revealed more than they intended when they felt secure in their superiority. Marcus decided it was time to get closer to his enemy. Marcus positioned himself at the hotel bar each evening, nursing whiskey while Vincent held court with local dignitaries. The Philadelphia businessman spoke freely about his successful enterprises, his social connections, his dedication to justice. everything calculated, well-dressed, clearly wealthy, but her expression suggested intimate knowledge of Vincent's true character. When Vincent retired for the evening, the woman approached Marcus directly. "You're the rancher," the one defending her. Marcus Whitfield. Catherine Ashworth. The name hit Marcus like lightning. Vincent's sister, mentioned in passing during his boastful stories. She was supposed to be supporting his testimony, providing family credibility to his claims. "You're not what I expected," Marcus said carefully. "Neither are you. Vincent described you as a desperate fool defending a criminal." "And you believe him?" Catherine's laugh held no humor. "I haven't believed my brother in 20 years. She glanced around the crowded hotel lobby, then leaned closer. "We need to talk. Privately." They met in Marcus's room an hour later. Catherine's composure cracked the moment the door closed, revealing exhaustion and fear that matched Josephine's on that first desperate night. "Vincent sent for me to testify about Josephine's supposed theft. He expects me to confirm his version of events." "Will you?" "I should. He's my brother, my family." But her tone suggested she was trying to convince herself rather than Marcus. "Tell me about Josephine's father." Catherine's hands trembled as she poured herself wine from Marcus's bottle. "Thomas Rivers was Vincent's business partner for 15 years. Honest, hard-working, brilliant at finding profitable investments. He built half of Vincent's fortune through careful planning and ethical practices." "What happened to him?" "Vincent said he died of a heart attack. Sudden, unexpected, very convenient timing." "You don't believe it?" "Thomas was in perfect health. He'd just discovered some irregularities in the company books, financial discrepancies that pointed to Vincent embezzling from their shared accounts." Marcus felt pieces clicking into place. "Vincent killed him." "I can't prove it, but Thomas died the night before he planned to confront Vincent about the missing money. And Josephine inherited everything, which made her Vincent's problem. He needed control 3 times that I know of, probably more. Each time he manufactures theft charges, bribes judges, ensures conviction. The women disappear into prison or death, and Vincent claims their assets as compensation for his supposed losses. Marcus read entries describing Vincent's pleasure at seeing his victims broken by legal proceedings, his satisfaction at turning society's prejudices into weapons, his absolute confidence that wealth and connections made him untouchable. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I'm tired of being complicit in my brother's evil. I've watched him destroy innocent lives while I stayed silent out of family loyalty. I won't do it anymore." "You'll testify against him?" "I'll do more than that. I'll provide everything needed to expose his pattern of behavior. The journals, the financial records, witness statements from people he thought were too scared to talk." Catherine's transformation from complicit sister to determined ally reminded Marcus of Josephine's quiet strength. Both women had found courage to stand against men who viewed them as possessions to be controlled. "Vincent will destroy you for this betrayal. He destroyed me years ago when he forced me to watch his crimes while staying silent. At least now I can do something meaningful with my guilt." They spent the night planning their courtroom strategy. Catherine had documentation proving Vincent's previous frame-ups, financial records showing his embezzlement from Thomas Rivers, and personal correspondence revealing his obsessive pursuit of Josephine. Most importantly, she had Vincent's own words condemning him. His journals contained detailed admissions of manufacturing evidence, bribing witnesses, and using legal systems to persecute innocent women.
He's so arrogant he documents everything, Catherine explained. He sees his manipulations as proof of superior intelligence, rather than evidence of criminal behavior. Marcus felt hope for the first time since Josephine's arrest. Vincent's overconfidence had created the tools for his own destruction, written in his own hand and preserved by his own pride. The trial would still be dangerous. Judge Morrison's prejudices remained unchanged. Vincent's wealth and connections still provided advantages. But now they had weapons to fight back with.
The territorial courthouse filled beyond capacity on December 15th. Word had spread about the trial, drawing curious spectators from across the Wyoming territory. Vincent sat at the prosecutor's table, radiating confidence, his expensive suit and gold watch marking him as a man of substance and credibility. Judge Morrison entered with the bearing of someone who'd never questioned his own moral authority. His reputation for harsh sentences preceded him like a storm cloud. Marcus watched the judge's face as he surveyed the crowded courtroom, noting the way his eyes lingered dismissively on the few faces that weren't white. The prosecution's case unfolded exactly as Vincent had planned. Witnesses testified about Josephine's access to valuable family heirlooms. Documents proved the jewelry's worth exceeded most people's annual income. Expert testimony confirmed the pieces belonged to the Ashworth estate. Vincent himself took the stand with practiced ease, describing his family's generosity toward Thomas Rivers and their shock at discovering the theft. "Miss Rivers was like family to us," he said with manufactured sorrow. "We trusted her completely. Such betrayal cuts deeply." His performance was masterful. Dignified grief mixed with reluctant duty to prosecute crime. The kind of testimony that convinced juries to impose maximum sentences. Judge Morrison's questions revealed his predetermined conclusions. He focused on the jewelry's value, the defendant's opportunity, the prosecution's evidence. Everything designed to justify the conviction he'd already decided upon. Samuel Hayes fought valiantly, but Vincent's preparation showed. Every possible defense had been anticipated and countered. The stolen goods were genuine Ashworth property. Josephine had possessed them when arrested. No alternative explanation seemed credible. Marcus watched Josephine throughout the proceedings, marveling at her composure under assault. She sat straight-backed and dignified, meeting accusations with calm strength that reminded him why he'd fallen in love with her voice that first evening. By afternoon, conviction seemed inevitable. Judge Morrison's comments from the bench left no doubt about his intentions. Vincent's confident smile suggested a man watching his careful plans unfold perfectly. Then Catherine entered the courtroom. She moved with quiet determination, carrying a leather portfolio that made Vincent. Volunteering for the defense was unprecedented in his experience. Catherine took the stand with the same dignity Josephine had shown throughout her ordeal. She faced her brother without flinching, drawing strength from years of suppressed guilt, finally finding release. "Miss Ashworth, what is your relationship to the defendant?" "Josephine Rivers worked alongside my family for several years. Her father was my brother's business partner." "Did she have access to valuable family property?" "She had access to her own family's property. The jewelry in question belonged to her mother, not the Ashworth estate." The courtroom erupted. Vincent's face turned crimson as he realized his sister's betrayal. Judge Morrison demanded order while Hayes pressed his advantage. "How do you know this?" "Because I watched my brother steal those pieces from Thomas Rivers' home after his death. I helped him plan the theft charges as a way to reclaim what he'd taken." Catherine's testimony destroyed Vincent's case completely. She described his pattern of persecution, his obsession with controlling women who rejected his advances, his systematic use of false theft charges to destroy innocent lives. "My brother has done this before, 3 times that I documented. He manufactures evidence, bribes witnesses, uses legal systems to satisfy personal vendettas against women who won't submit to his control.
Hayes introduced Vincent's journals as evidence, page after page of handwritten admissions detailing his crimes, his methods, his satisfaction at watching innocent women destroyed by legal proceedings he'd manipulated. Vincent's own words condemned him more thoroughly than any outside testimony could have managed. "She stole from my family," he protested desperately, but his journals told a different story. They described his theft of Josephine's inheritance, his forged documents, his bribes to prosecution witnesses. Judge Morrison's bias crumbled under overwhelming evidence of prosecutorial misconduct. Even his prejudices couldn't ignore documentation this complete. "All charges against the defendant are dismissed," he announced with obvious reluctance. "Federal warrants will be issued for Vincent Ashworth on charges of fraud, perjury, and conspiracy." Vincent's arrest happened immediately. The marshals who'd brought him west now dragged him away in shackles, his expensive clothes unable to disguise. Josephine established a school for local children, her education and intelligence finally finding appropriate outlets. Her evening concerts continued, but now they celebrated joy rather than mourning loss. Word reached them eventually of Vincent's death in federal prison, killed by inmates who had their own opinions about men who persecuted innocent women. Catherine inherited his estate, using the wealth to establish legal aid for women facing similar persecution. The ranch that had once represented Marcus's failure became a symbol of second chances and the power of love to overcome social barriers. Josephine's voice still floated across the Wyoming landscape each evening, but now it sang of home rather than exile. Their first child arrived the following spring, a daughter who would grow up knowing both her parents had chosen love over convention, courage over comfort. The land that had nearly broken Marcus instead became the foundation for a family built on mutual respect and shared dreams. Sometimes truth does triumph over manufactured evidence. Sometimes love proves stronger than social prejudice. Sometimes the songs that begin in sorrow end in joy that echoes across generations.